Happy Monday, all you minties. Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your advanced look at the Adam Warlock Omnibus from Marvel Comics. So, let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So here we have the very first Adam Warlock Omnibus. We've had the gallery edition of Warlock, and that was mainly by Jim Starlin. But this is everything from his early adventures, and I'll talk about when all this takes place and what it leads into. But first, what we're looking at here is a direct market cover by the legendary Jim Starlin. I believe, this is from issue number 15. It says so right there. I don't believe. I was just told by looking at the cover. But yes, this is the one by Jim Starlin. On the left-hand side is your standard edition cover, and of course the spine being different. That standard edition cover is supplied by Gil Kane, but everything else underneath the dust jacket is identical. So let's take a closer look back at this book. So here we have some key players, but it's interesting because the key players of this direct market cover don't really come until like the last third of the book. But here is Adam Warlock, and actually this look didn't even happen until Jim Starlin took over the book. Let's look at the spine really quick. So you notice there was a difference in the spine whenever I showed the standard edition cover, but here we have Adam Warlock, and here are the creators: Lee, Kirby, Thomas, Al Friedrich, and Kane, and just to name a few others down here like Bob Brown and Jim Starlin. What's interesting is that the Nova Classic started with a spine that was kind of like a modern spine. But I guess before Nova, because he was more 70s, this took place really in the 60s is when Adam Warlock started. 1967, I believe. All right, here we go. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, reconceived by Roy Thomas and Gil Kane. Yes, and then he got another rebirth under Jim Starlin. Resurrected as a tormented god. Adam Warlock's original life and death saga complete in one cosmic omnibus. What? What do you mean life and death? What are we talking about here? And then the price down here, $125. Here are all the covers of the issues collected inside. So we not only just have the stories of Adam Warlock in here. Let's look underneath the dust jacket. We also have the stories of her in here. Here's the creators on the right-hand side of that flap. And then on the left-hand side, it tells you a little bit about who Adam Warlock is. So I'm going to open this up. We're going to talk about the stories collected in here. Maybe get into some minor spoilers about the character, how he went from him to Adam Warlock and what role the High Evolutionary played and all that. And then get a little bit into the Jim Starlin era without going too deep into spoilers. But just in case of minor spoilers moving forward, Warlock Omnibus right there. I don't know why I didn't show this first. I usually do. And then Marvel Omnibus, Adam Warlock, the creators again with that picture of him, the being known as him. And then this very important emerald, jewel, gem. And then I guess in the movie, stone. But let's crack it open now. Alright, so let's go ahead and crack this book open. And some black end paper there. Warlock Omnibus. Now, this has been previously collected in Marvel Masterworks format, and it's also been collected in a complete collection, but just the Jim Starlin stories. And of course, like I mentioned, the Warlock by Jim Starlin Gallery Edition, and then there were other, not really collected editions, but single issues that reprinted a lot of the Jim Starlin stuff. And here's the Soul Gem again. And then Adam Warlock right there with his new costume, because that's not the way he really appeared at first. And I'll tell a little bit of history about that. Here are all the credits, and oh my gosh, that is a lot of credits right here. And I love that about this particular era, because if you look at like 50s collection, and even some 60s collection, they don't really credit a lot of the colorists or even inkers sometimes, because unfortunately, they just didn't write them down back then. They didn't give credit to people. I mean, if you go back to the 30s and 40s, they didn't even give credit to some pencilers or co-creators, Bill Finger. So I'm glad to see these many names in this collection, though. But the important ones here are Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, and Jim Starlin. Those are kind of the three different eras. And then, of course, Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, and Jim Starlin. But let's go ahead and continue with this. So there are your creators, and here is your table of contents where you're going to find each of these issues, and of course the date that it came out. And one thing you're going to see, like we've seen in these type of collections before, is for example Warlock number 8 came out in October of 1973, and then we jump to Warlock number 9, which was 2 years later, October of 1975. But during that cancellation period, we had some other stories here, mainly by Jerry Conway right there. And we'll talk a little bit about that era too. So here's your introduction by Roy Thomas, talking about the inspiration for Adam Warlock and giving you a little bit of behind the scenes as to his creation. But before we talk about that, this collects Fantastic Four 66 and 67 and Thor 165 through 166. Now, during those 4 issues, it's very important to note that he was only known as him. Adam Warlock was the being known as him, created by the Enslave here at the Beehive, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. Also collecting Marvel Premiere 1 and 2, Warlock 1 through 15, Incredible Hulk 176 through 178, and Annual number 6, Strange Tales 178 to 181, Marvel Team Up number 55, Avengers Annual 7, and Marvel 2 and 161 through 63, and Annual number 2. This book has 904 pages, and again, retails for $125. So, in his first appearance, or the being known as him, it's about Alicia Masters, actually. The Enclave ends up kidnapping her because they can't reach this being of pure energy. They can't see him. So they need somebody to sculpt his visage, his face. And they end up kidnapping her. And in a interesting but really weird comic book sci-fi way, in order to find out where she went, because during this time she's dating Ben Grimm, Mr. Fantastic creates this sort of like time machine that can tell you exactly what's happened in the past, and he recreates this machine that can teleport them to the Beehive where these scientists are. And what the Enclave is doing is, these 3 scientists right here, that guy is Hamilton, but anyway, these guys are trying to create a being that will wipe out humanity and kind of do their bidding, which I always think these plans are ridiculous. If you're going to wipe out humanity, what's the point? Then there's like the 3 of you guys sitting around in a throne, I guess, with him walking around. But anyway, of course that doesn't happen. So she does. She's able to shape his face, and the being that's inside of this cocoon turns out to be this godlike creature. So here's his cocoon, which if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, you've seen a cocoon, and if you've seen the trailers to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, you kind of know what's coming out of that cocoon. But when he first appears, he is just this golden god-looking creature. And he sees the good that is in Alicia Masters, and pretty much wipes away the Enclave and the Beehive, and the Fantastic Four get away, and the character disappears. And, like I said, he was just called him. Now, we don't see that character until Thor 165 in this particular issue right here, where he comes back. He's awakened out of his cocoon, and it has something to do with the Watcher. I love that splash page right there. There's a couple awesome splash pages here. The fight with Thor is awesome. So he awakens, and, he's feeling kind of lonely, and he's like, hey, I want to take a mate. Yo, Sif, what's up, girl? And Thor's like, dude, that's my girl. What are you doing? Don't look at her. Talk to me. And she's like, I'm my own woman. I can take care of... Okay, none of that happened. That all kind of happened in my head. But you get the idea. He was hitting on Sif. He wants her as his mate, and Thor's like, not on my watch, homie. So they start fighting. Look at that, man. And I mean, this is a being that's almost as powerful as a god. And again, only known as the being known as him during this time. And what he does to try to get away from all these things is he puts himself in a cocoon, which is the weirdest... Well, I guess a defense mechanism works really well. And then he shoots himself off to space. Now, the behind the scenes is that during this time, Marvel is heading into the late 60s era, right? He came out in Fantastic Four 66 and 67, which was in 1967. So Marvel had these characters that they were coming up with, and Stan Lee was just creating characters left and right. And if you wanted to create a character of any kind of importance in the Marvel universe, he shows up in either Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four. And then they can blow up and do their own thing by other creators. And that's what he was kind of hoping for. You know, he created this character known as him, and maybe somebody else could come and write the character. Well, leave it to Roy Thomas. Now, if you know a little bit of the history of the Marvel Universe and comics and behind the scenes, Roy Thomas was the guy that kind of took over every title after Stan Lee became president of Marvel. As a matter of fact, during this time of Marvel premiere, when they were trying out these new stories with also reprinted titles, I believe, in the back, he was becoming a little more of editor-in-chief, that by the time the Warlock series started, his ongoing series, he was only able to write 2 issues. But let's talk about this. The Marvel premiere issues 1 and 2. This is when we see the return of him, and we get a little bit of background as to where he's been. And then we see this character that appeared in Thor. This is the High Evolutionary who's got a obsession with evolution, so much so that he himself has evolved into this particular being. And he gets this cocoon and tells Adam, or only known as Warlock, or I mean, no, he's only known as him right now, tells him exactly what's going on. He tells him about how he's created this man beast out of a wolf, and he's evolved him into this man beast, and he created a whole new world, and he called it Counter Earth. Now, it's sitting somewhere where the Earthlings, us, we can't see this planet, this world that he's created. And it's pretty much exactly like Earth, except it's called the Counter Earth. The big difference is that there are no superheroes on this world, but that's where Man Beast is living. Now, in order to fix this mistake of creating Man Beast, who's kind of destroying this world that he also created, he's like, I'm just gonna wipe it clean, you know, destroy it, and then all these new men, all these villains that are down there will die. And Adam Warlock's, wait a minute, but what about the good people that live down there? Give them a chance. Let me go down there and be their savior. Send me down there, since you just revived me, and I will go and fight the Man Beast. And the High Evolutionary is like, yeah, sure. But before you go, you need a name. So I'm going to call you Warlock, and you need an emerald. So here's the emerald. And that's kind of all you really get to know about that in the first issue. Later on, of course, that emerald becomes a jewel. They start calling it a jewel. And then it becomes the very and most important thing in the Marvel cinematic universe for a long time, an infinity gem. Or in the movies, an infinity stone. And it is the soul stone that he possesses. Now, issue number 2 is him coming down to this Counter Earth and meeting these 4 kids. You have Eddie, you have his sister Ellie, you have David, and you have Jason. And it is these 4 characters, actually I think it's just Ellie, that give him the name Adam, because they think the name Warlock is just too generic. So that's where Adam Warlock comes from. And it's these 4 characters that first give him that name. And these 4 kids are kind of like his... Alright, here we go. I'm pretty sure I'm laying it on thick when you have this being that created this world, and he sends sort of his son down there to save it from this man beast who's kind of like the devil. And you have these 4 characters who are almost like your Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John characters. So a lot of this has a lot of biblical allegory. I mean, it's in your face. They do not hide it. At the beginning of the book, in the introduction, which I always suggest not reading, especially when it's Roy Thomas, because he breaks down a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes, and that might spoil what happens throughout the book. But he tells you exactly how he got the inspiration. Yes, there's a lot of Christ-like elements to him, but there was a lot more of Jesus Christ Superstar in Adam Warlock, and you can kind of see that here. And he gets to write the first 2 issues with Gil Kane, then Mike Friedrich takes over the book, and let me see, this is issue number 2 of The Power of Warlock. So Warlock becomes so popular in the issues of Marvel Premiere, that's exactly what Marvel wanted. They wanted a like it's like a trial run. We'll feature a couple of characters in Marvel Premiere and see if they're popular enough to warrant their own ongoing series. So he got his own ongoing series, and for the first 2 issues, it was Roy Thomas and then Mike Friedrich stepped in. Big John Buscema doing the layouts for issue number 2, but Gil Kane comes back for issues 3 through 5. And this is basically the big battles with the Man-Beast and how he ends up helping out these kids and saving this world. And in this world, you're going to see the counterparts of like Reed Richards and Victor Von Doom. But there's, of course, a couple of twists. Now, issue number 5 is written by Ron Goulart, who was a writer and also a neighbor to Gil Kane. I love those reading behind the scenes, and that's how they got him on the book. And it is also Gil Kane's final issue, because issue number 6, we get the new artist Bob Brown, who had come over from DC Comics. And here is where he gets to draw these particular issues of Adam Warlock. Now, with issue number 8, if you were paying attention at the beginning when I was looking at the table of contents, there's some really cool pictures in here by Bob Brown. The title goes on hiatus because, well, the title gets canceled. It just wasn't selling enough. So there's a lot of plot threads that were just dangling there. Does he save the Counter-Earth from Man-Beast? Well, that gets a solution in the pages of the Incredible Hulk 176 to 178, where Bruce Banner, taking a ship from the Inhumans, and you can find out exactly why, ends up going to Counter-Earth. This is all written by Jerry Conway, and he helps Adam Warlock with this battle against the Man-Beast. There's all kinds of resolution there, and then we get Strange Tales. So now we have a new era of Adam Warlock. It's another year, it's been about a year since the title was canceled, so Adam Warlock appears again in Strange Tales to see if there's interest in giving this character his monthly title back. This time we get Jim Starlin, writer, colorist, and artist. My gosh, just doing everything. And the panels, and I think I've talked about this particular era when I was looking at the gallery edition. It's absolutely stunning. But this right here introduces us to a concept that has Adam Warlock out of Counter-Earth. He's left Counter-Earth. That has been resolved in those issues of Thor, and he's now more of a cosmic being. Because during the Counter-Earth era, you don't really get to see any of Earth's superheroes. He has nothing really to do with the cosmic era other than just being in space at the beginning of those issues and then coming to that Counter-Earth. Here, Jim Starlin takes him to the stars and makes him not just a Christ-like figure for Earth, but also for the entire universe. And it's a very interesting thing that he starts off with his first issue, because he introduces us to this idea about a certain church, and that is the Universal Church of Truth. It's an intergalactic religious organization, and it's all being led by somebody that kind of looks like our titular character right there. So it's this guy named Magus, and very important, there are a couple of other characters that first appear through here, and that is Pip the Troll and Gamora, the deadliest woman in the galaxy or universe. Please, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Jim Starlin got her costume idea from an issue of Creepy Magazine, and you get a no prize if you can tell me what issue that is. I know I've read it before, and I remember seeing it, I'm like, whoa, that looks a lot like Gamora. And then later on, I remember reading somewhere that Jim Starlin got his idea from that particular issue. But this is Magus. Now, there's a big twist as to who Magus is, and you can find all that out for yourself. Keep in mind, that Magus is different than the Magus that appears in the Infinity War, and he has a different origin. This Magus is different. Now, later on, we have another character, another cosmic character that plays a big part in all this, and that is, of course, Thanos. This guy, the Mad Titan. So, when issue number 15 comes out, a lot of, again, plot threads are left dangling there. So, the powers that be at Marvel said, you know what, Jim, take your character over to the Avengers. We'll give you an annual. So here you have the return of Adam Warlock, because there's a big cliffhanger at the end of his series. So with the appearance of Thanos and Pip the Troll and Gamora, this story comes to an end, and it wraps up rather nicely. And you don't see the character of Adam Warlock for a few years. Now, you do get the Incredible Hulk annual here, which kind of wraps up another storyline. Not necessarily the storyline of Adam Warlock, but it introduces us to this character right here, the Paragon, which becomes something else. Now we've had a him, and now it's time to introduce a her. The coming of her. So it is within the title of Marvel 2-in-1 that we have a three-parter starring her. Now, if you know the gimmick behind Marvel 2-in-1, it's always starring the Thing and someone else. So for the first one, I think it's Starhawk. And then issue 62, it's Moondragon. And then we get Warlock, question mark, which has a very iconic cover. Remember when I said about the whole thing, like a Christ-like figure? Yeah. Well, Jim Starlin really borrowed heavily for that. Now, these aren't Jim Starlin issues per se. Those are written by Mark Grunwald. But that's kind of where this collection ends. And that is where the story of Adam Warlock ends. Because we don't really see those characters until the Infinity Gauntlet. And there's about 11 years in between the ending of this and the beginning of the Infinity Gauntlet. So, really depends on where you want to put your book. You put it before Infinity Gauntlet, or do you put it in alphabetical order? All up to you. All right, let's welcome everybody back that didn't want any kind of spoilers. All right, we're looking at the back matter here. Some sketches, including the redesign of him, or Adam Warlock, by John Romita, who was designing every character back then. These were production photostats before the final art and lettering. Then you have some original artwork here by Gil Kane, Tom Sutton doing the inks. Really was hoping that we get that awesome image of him punching Thor. There is a lot of extras back here. I mean, a lot of extras. Original cover art right there by Jim Starlin. And this is the trade dress right there where they're putting the logo. And apparently the captions and the Warlock figure were separated on an overlay. Man, talk about doing that before the age of computers. Actually had to cut that out. Here's some original art by Jim Starlin. Some pages. And then we have the calendar. And holy crap, this is the thumbnail sketches for the issues. That is freaking awesome. There is a lot of that in here. Original artwork for the annual number 7 of Avengers. The Marvel Team Up portfolio right there. And the handbook of the Marvel Universe. There's the Enclave, the people responsible for the creation of him. Now keep in mind, the handbook is way outdated. We're talking about 1984, 1985 when the first one came out. So even within the 90s, that was outdated. The different alien races, this is all written by Mark Grunwald. The Treasury Edition. And these are reprints right here. And the Warlock Special Edition. These are the ones I remember having and reading these adventures for the first time. These are reprints of the Jim Starlin era of Warlock. So it's really cool to have everything in one book. I'm glad that they decided to make this omnibus because, my goodness, we had Nova, we have the original Captain Marvel, which we need one more omnibus to wrap up that era. And now we have Adam Warlock. We have the old Thanos stories, we have the old Guardians of the Galaxy stories, we have Silver Surfer, but we need another Silver Surfer volume, those Steve Englehart era. And the ones in the 90s, reprinting. I think I picked a couple of these up just for the covers alone. Might have been this one here, number 6. The trade paperback of the Marvel Masterworks. The Final Threat trade paperback. Essential Warlock. Did I know about the Essential Warlock? I don't think I did. Essential Marvel 2-in-1. Avengers vs. Thanos. I love the fact that they keep using this image even though they mirrored it. And then the complete collection. I remember that trade that came out in 2014. That's the back cover. And then Thanos Wars, the Infinity Origins Omnibus. This is the standard edition cover by In-Hyuk Lee. Alright, let's look at this binding. 904 pages. It is sewn binding. Let's actually talk about this eye, because there's not much of one. It's a very small eye for a book that has 904 pages. Luckily, not a lot of spread pages, but if you've seen my other videos, it can be a problem whenever you're reading panels that are really close to the edge here. Like this, you have to hold it down. I know, it's not a big deal to some people, but it does bother others. Because of that gutter curve right there, you have to hold it down like this. And this is printed at the iMac printer. Not the thinnest of paper, but you can see some of the art and word bubbles bleeding through from the opposite page when there's light colors being used, or white for that matter. So you can see the word bubble right there. Let me see if I can find another page. Perfect. That's what I wanted, a white page. So on the opposite side, you can tell that says Thor. And, I mean, this is a white page, so you can see that that's Thor. And you can even see that there's a frame on the opposite page of this cover. Well, nope, it wasn't a frame. I'm sorry. It was the letters him. But you can see that coming through. And just want to be thorough with my overview. I know it doesn't bother everybody, but it does bother some people. And that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcondition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. Let me know in the comments down below if you are picking this up, and out of curiosity, what caught your interest about Adam Warlock that you wanted to check this out. Whether it was Adam Warlock showing up in the modern era of the Guardians of the Galaxy or the DNA cosmic era, or was it the Infinity Gauntlet? Yeah, or these original issues right here. I'm always wondering what brings people to these particular characters and collections per se. But let me know in the comments down below if you already have the Masterworks or that complete collection, although the complete collection was only Jim Starlin. But anyway, if you have any of those and you plan on upgrading, and let me know which cover you're going to get. That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.